The freedom of navigation underpins the global oceanic order. You, me, the Americans all talk about it. But are we talking about the same thing? In 1979, at the height of the Cold War, then US President Jimmy Carter established the Freedom of Navigation program. It's defined as a two-pronged, complementary strategy to support the global mobility of US forces and the unimpeded traffic of lawful commerce. The Department of State diplomatically protests excessive maritime claims. The Department of Defense conducts operational challenges against them. These challenges are known as the Freedom of Navigation Operations, or FONOPs.
If we let excessive maritime claims go unchallenged, then we risk normalizing the actions of those countries, and thus their claims are perceived to be reality, which can have geopolitical consequences. Recently, FONOPs have been associated with China's aggressive maneuvers in the South China Sea.
There we have our problem. For those on the receiving end of the challenges, it feels like they have less to do about commerce, but more about mobility.
If you want to know the safety of the civilian navigation in South China Sea, you could very well check with the industry, shipping industry, ask them. You'll find the premium doesn't go up, never go up because of inattention in South China Sea. It's not about the commercial ships, it's about military, about American military vessels, the freedom of American military vessels wherever they wants to go.
The United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea codifies the freedom of navigation. On the high seas, they have a definition. High seas are all parts of the sea that are not included in the exclusive economic zone, in the territorial sea, or in the internal waters of a state, or in the archipelagic waters of an archipelagic state. That means in these categories, rules are different. In the territorial sea, which is defined as within 12 nautical miles from baselines determined, it is stated specifically that if any warship does not comply with the laws and regulations of the coastal state concerning passage through the territorial sea and disregards any request for compliance therewith which is made to them, the coastal state may require to leave the territorial sea immediately. China's rules and regulations have been very clear since 1992. The law of the People's Republic of China on the territorial sea and the contiguous zone states that foreign ships for military purpose shall be subjected to approval by the government of the People's Republic of China for entering the territorial sea of the People's Republic of China, and that Chinese authorities have the right to order them to leave in case of violation of the laws and regulations.
Warships, by their very nature, can be menacing. And I think for China especially, to see American warships sailing into waters very close to China, there is an inherent menace in that action. There is no need for the United States to be having armed patrols in the South China Sea.
The US military vessels have sailed into China's territorial waters many times in the name of freedom of navigation. In 2018, the USS Hopper sailed within 12 nautical miles of Huangyang Island. In 2017, the USS Dewey did it around Taiping Island. Same story in 2015 with the USS Lassen and Zhubi Reef. What makes the United States able to claim the freedom of navigation despite violating UNCLOS is that it's never part of it. The United States never signed on to that.
It doesn't have much legitimacy or credibility in trying to interpret key terms to its benefit. More fundamentally, the U.S. doesn't have access to the dispute settlement mechanisms of the convention. And because it doesn't have access to these mechanisms, it is reduced to bullying its way. That is, demonstrating through the show of military might what it considers the correct interpretation.
That gives the Americans enormous flexibility in defining what freedom of navigation is. I mean, just take a look at its attitudes towards China. I looked through the US DoD's annual Freedom of Navigation reports all the way back to 1992 when it first appeared online. The surges in the numbers of phonoms about China all correspond to America's policy change towards it. You can see it started with zeros and ones, but got a jump to 2 in 2007. That was the year when the Bush 43 administration drew up the China Rule, a policy that fortifies export control on products deemed good for Chinese military end use. Then a sudden jump to 4 in 2011. The same year, the Obama administration announced the pivot to Asia policy. The number gradually climbed up, reaching 7 in 2018 and stayed high for 3 years. Then the Biden administration pulled back a little bit, back to the Obama level. It's not really about freedom of navigation. It's about power politics.
The U.S. is demonstrating its power, its might, its presence, and its resolve to continue to be a dominant or leading force in Asia.
So let's talk about what we are really talking about. The ships are free to sail. Rules and laws are not up for free interpretation. And freedom can't be imposed at gunpoint.